Welcome to Freya's Fairy Tales. We believe fairy tales are both stories we enjoyed as children and something that we can achieve ourselves. Each week, we will talk to authors about their favorite fairy tales when they were kids, and their adventure to holding their very own fairy tale in their hands. At the end of each episode, we will finish off with a fairy tale or short story read as close to the original author's version as possible. I am your host, Freya Victoria. I'm an audiobook narrator that loves reading fairy tales, novels, and bringing stories to life through narration. I am also fascinated by talking to authors and learning about their why and how for creating their stories. We have included all of the links for today's author and our show in the show notes. Be sure to check out our website and sign up for our newsletter for the latest on the podcast. Today is part 1 of 2, where we are talking to T.L. Combs about her novels. Over the next 2 weeks, you will hear about writing from a young age, learning from other authors before you get started, learning how to market, making mistakes and learning from them, working on multiple projects at the same time, her advice to take all advice with a grain of salt, and to not lose yourself in the process. The Audacity of Flower, the Carter Sisters series. Get swept away to another time and place, where Poppy Flower Carter's sheltered life at Murder Manor is turned upside down, when her childhood friend Georgie's actions threaten to ruin everything. Forced to leave behind all she knows, Poppy takes on a new role as maid for Master Louis Allen Yoon, a man with a mysterious past and undeniable charm. As she tries to navigate her new life and her growing feelings for Master Yoon, Poppy wonders if she can find true love without compromising her values. T.L. Combs, author of the fantasy epic The Bellum Realm series, delivers a heartwarming and timeless tale set in a Regency-inspired world that will reignite your belief in the power of love. So the podcast is Freya's Fairy Tales, and that is fairy tales in 2 ways. Fairy tales are something that we watched or read or had read to us when we were little. It's also the journey for you to spend weeks, months, or years working on your book to hold that in your hands as a fairy tale for you.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
the question I like to start off with is, what was your favorite fairy tale or short story when you were a kid? And did that favorite change as you got older?
Um, my favorite as a kid was Little Mermaid. I wore that tape out. Uh, yes, VHS.
Yes, back in the day.
But yeah, which I still have that tape actually, and I have the original cover where it had the thing on it. If you heard about that story.
No.
Okay, so there is a disgruntled, apparently this is a true story. There was a disgruntled artist, and before he left, he drew a manhood on the castle front
Oh
in the original sketches, and they
no.
went
So
out.
how
Yeah.
long did it take them to
I
realize?
don't know. I just know that we have that copy. Because we compared the two and they're clearly different.
Okay. All right. So I guess don't piss off the artist.
Nope. Especially when they're the last ones to check things off. But yeah,
Yeah.
Little Mermaid was my favorite. I loved the music, the songs, the storyline, everything back then. And then The Swan Princess was a very close, if not
Oh,
equal, second.
I remember that. Yeah, we
Yeah,
watched.
that soundtrack, fire.
And I think there were multiple ones, weren't there?
Yeah, but I don't like the first one. I just love the first one. That's
Okay.
it. That's it.
Yeah, I remember watching that, like my mom and my sister and me, like sitting on the couch watching
Yeah.
Swan Princess.
Yeah, there's like 30 like sequels afterwards.
Oh
It's
gosh,
crazy.
no.
There's so
Uh,
many, and now they have like
uh,
the animation kind of ones that look creepy.
mm,
Yeah, they're on
yeah.
Netflix. Don't watch those.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since I was a kid. Like I couldn't even tell you the last time I watched that movie.
At least once a year.
Nice. So at what age did you start writing at all?
It was about 6 when I started writing like little stories in a notebook that I would make, and then I made books and stapled them and did
Nice.
illustrations and everything. I'm trying my darndest to find them. I don't know if I ever will, but That's when I found my sticker book. I don't know if you saw that video on TikTok.
I did not.
I found all my sticker books from second grade, and it's great.
Nice.
But yeah, I was writing stories, yeah, ever since I could write. So but I never really got into it until I was maybe in my mid 20s.
Okay.
And then I wrote a couple of I wrote a duology, but it was like they're pretty short, maybe like 70, between 40 and 70,000 words a
Okay.
piece. But they were like a sister kind of like his point of view, her point of view kind of things,
Mm.
stories. Um, so I did that in like 2008, 2009, and I just had them printed for me. I didn't like sell them or anything.
Mhm.
So yeah, and after that, I kind of went dormant and didn't begin writing again until what, last year now, beginning of last year.
And so
Um,
you've put out, because I saw you have quite a few books out now. That's all since just last
yeah,
year.
yeah.
So you were like, I'm gonna hit the ground running, and we're just gonna keep writing and going.
It's like all the repressed creativity just kind of exploded and
Yeah. So your first, let's go with the duology. So
right.
we're gonna, when you were a kid, that's different set of
Yeah.
story and writing
Yeah.
habits and all that. So the duology that you wrote, how long did it take you to write each of those books?
It was like a full summer that I wrote the two.
Okay.
The second one was easy because it was just his point of view. So all I had to do was just write
Like
his
reverse
side
it.
of what was
Yeah.
happening and add a couple of more scenes, and that was pretty much it. So yeah, the whole to write all to both of them rather was, yeah, that entire summer, I believe. And I think it was like my way of healing, because I was in a really bad relationship at the time, and
Okay.
I think that was like my way of coping, just
Yeah.
kind of creating this fantasy. Well, it wasn't a fantasy; it was a YA contemporary love story, but it wasn't real, and it was
Yeah, yeah.
very love, just love, and all that kind of crap. And I think it was, but it was like a definite healing thing, sort of for me,
Mhm.
to kind of get through that. And like I said, I never published it. I just got it printed, and just I have the copies actually right there, and that was it. And so
So you
I
didn't go
made
through like editing or anything like
not
that.
real, not my, I mean, other than my own read
Right.
through, which I'm sure was garbage, but
You're like, no
just
one's ever gonna see this, so I don't need
right.
to like do all that.
It's not that serious.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea of the process of any of that. I just wanted to get these stories out of my brain and onto
Mhm.
paper. Um, so doing it now, it was a whole new experience because of course everything's different now. This
Yeah.
is like
It's been a
what,
few years.
just a little. So it was learning everything and all that kind of stuff. That
Mhm.
was the most interesting part of this journey.
So it took you a summer to write those 2 pretty much the same book.
Yeah.
So the first one that you actually published, did you, like, remember some of that process? Did that help you shorten the time frame, or did it take you about the same length, or
Because they were two separate genres, because the
Mhm.
first book I published officially is fantasy, so it's a romantasy.
Okay.
So completely different departure of what I had before.
Yeah.
Different dialogue, different types, just interactions. It's older
Yeah.
now because I'm older, and
Right.
so yeah, so it was a different dynamic altogether. So I was going in blind, and it was essentially just a random dream that I had, and then maladaptive daydreamed about it later and couldn't get it out of my head. And then my friend was like, write it down. So I did. And I
Like,
wrote,
maybe if you write it down, it will
yeah,
leave you alone.
yeah, it didn't. They persist. So I wrote books 1 and 2 and part of 3 that summer.
Oh gosh.
Like, well, that it was the end of winter into the summer, and by the towards the end of the summer, I was finished. Um, so yeah, it was like I said, it's just and then
So, unlike the first version, or your first books, when you had these ones you were gonna publish, what did you do once you had written the ones you were planning to publish?
I created a book talk account. And
Logical.
it just made sense. And then I Googled everything.
I do the
Just
same.
kind
I
yeah,
I
trying to
actually I told someone this morning, I cheated. I started this podcast, like, right after I started writing my first book that is not the one getting published soon. I cheated, so I talked to authors who have already done the process
right.
and find out how they did the process.
Right. I asked questions. I got in people's DMs. And I followed Ellie Harper because she was really, when I joined, it was only last year, but when I joined,
Yeah.
she was really big at, here's what you do, here's what I'm doing
Mhm.
right now, da da da. Da. And I was like, awesome. So she was one of the first authors that I followed.
Mhm.
And she was super, super helpful because I was like, and I'm doing that right now. And oh, okay, let me write that down. So like I had post-it notes all over my
Oh
computer. I
my
had
gosh.
notebooks, like,
I have screenshots
yeah,
on my phone.
yeah, and yeah, same screenshot that, we're gonna screenshot that. So I gotta go through and like delete some stuff because I got like thousands of pictures
Yeah.
in there.
You'll be like, "I
How
think I downloaded someone talking about this already, but we're gonna
yeah,
do this one
and
too."
yeah, that's exactly what like, oh, that's too far back. I don't know what I did that.
Right? See, when I joined, it was Golden Angel was the one that I would always see her tips and tricks, and
Yes,
so I have
yes,
so many of her videos downloaded for
same.
how to do this and how to do that, and I had her on the podcast last year,
Oh,
so
awesome. That's even better.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's essentially what I did. And I would reach out to Ellie and ask her, like, okay, so how did you do this? When did you do that? What does
See,
that look like? Am I doing
I'm
this right?
so I've been, like, absorbing all this information for I joined, Book Talk, let's see, like, September of 21 when I started narrating,
Okay.
and
Mm,
so I joined it as a different name, and no one really knows that other name that I used at the beginning, and so Freya
right.
started in, like, January, February of last year, and that's the name that everybody knows.
Hmm.
Everybody. I'm not some big famous person, but, like, that's the name that
Yeah.
most people know me by. And so I'm, like, building up this name and absorbing all these tips and tricks and all these things, and so
Right.
now that I'm, like, in the trenches of, like, my book's about to come out and all this stuff, I'm trying to very kindly spread the questions among other like, multiple authors so that, like,
Right.
one author's not getting it's like, I was asking, I have seen videos lately, I think it's Callista I can't remember her last name right now, does beautiful PR boxes,
Uh-huh.
and so
Oh,
I'm
who does
like
Invoking the the author of Invoking the
yeah, yeah,
Blood?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
she does beautiful book boxes,
Oh my
PR
God.
boxes, and so I'm like,
Strive to be that awesome.
I'm gonna ask her, "Where do you get these printed at?" Because,
Right.
like, hers are beautiful, so
They're stunning. Absolutely
yeah.
stunning.
And
Like,
then
love them.
Nicole, oh my gosh, she has the Gwen St. James Affair series. Nicole, I can't remember, I'm terrible with names.
I am too,
She's
so I can't
I've
help.
I've asked her more questions than most
Hmm.
because, like, we've interacted more than I
Right.
do with, like, Calista, I don't know that I've ever talked to her before, so I'm like, "Hey, I don't think we've ever spoken before, but, where do you get your boxes from?"
Right. I mean, hey, I get random people now asking me questions, like people I've never talked to before. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. It's not weird anymore. Like the first one, it was like kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, why are you
Yeah.
asking me? Not in a I don't want to answer that, but just like I'm
There are
pretty
so
sure there's
many.
so many others you can
Yeah.
ask. Are you asking me? But yeah, so it's I've gotten the vibe of this community and it's really awesome. And like the friend I was telling you about, it's H.E. Gober. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
heard of her, but yeah, she's
Mm.
written Trials of the Heart, and that came out on the 2nd of this month. And she's been basically my partner in crime and trying to figure this out because we wrote our books,
At the same time?
parallel to each other. And yeah,
Okay.
so I published mine in January and she published hers this month. And so we've just kind of been learning together and trying to figure it all out, trial and error. And then she'll ask me, okay, so how'd you do this? Because I'm doing this now. And like,
Yeah. So you
so
you got your first draft done.
mhm.
What did you do next?
First draft done of books 1 and 2, and then I read through it with my alpha readers,
Okay.
who, luckily for me, is Hannah, well, my BFF, and my editor. So it worked out great.
I
Um,
also conned my BFF into being my alpha.
yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it?
I'm like, "Hey, will you, like, tell me if this is like a book?" Like
Yeah. So I mean, it's essentially what we did with each other's books is we just send over chapters. All right, this
Mhm,
chapter's done. All right, this chapter's done, kind of
mhm.
thing. And then after a while, we just, here's here, I'll just attach you to the document so you can just go in whenever you feel like it. So that's where we're at now. So anytime I start a new document, I just go ahead and add her email and
See, I switched from Google Docs to Scrivener about halfway through the book,
hmm
and so she doesn't have Scrivener, she's not a writer, she's an
yeah,
avid reader,
right.
so I would do at the beginning, I had where she was in her own doc and I would just, like, load it in there, and then it got to where
hmm
I would write it in Scrivener, and then each weekend, I would, like, throw it through Pro Writing Aid real quick and then upload,
Yeah,
like, whatever I had
yeah.
finished that week, so
Yeah.
it's I feel like everyone has their own pattern, some don't send it
Yeah.
until it's done to their alpha
Right,
readers.
right, and I just find that so interesting. I'm like, "Wait, you wait?" Like like, literally
But
chapter
what
by
if they
chapter.
tell you it's awful early on and, like, you spent all this time on it?
Tell tell me now, like and that's
Yeah.
what's awesome about having an author as an alpha reader because
Mhm.
she's like, "I thought you were going to do this and that and this because that's lacking in here," and it's like, "Oh," and it's coming from love because it's a BFF, so she's like,
Right.
"No, this is gross. Keep going."
Some of the meanest things that I did to my alpha reader, I sent her like, there's a couple of decent cliffhangers in the book at the end of
Yeah,
chapters, and so I'd send her, like, one cliffhanger, and I warned her, like, "Hey, it's gonna stop at a cliffhanger because I haven't finished the next chapters yet."
right,
And so she waited to read it until I had finished the next chapter so that she
right.
didn't have to so the next cliffhanger, I didn't tell her.
Oh, no.
And then she gets to it and she's like, "How dare you?"
Those are the best.
And I was like,
I
I'll give you the next chapter right now, just give me a minute."
I got a comment one time that was just, "No." I just
Yeah.
stopped and then she's like, "Wait, where's the rest of it?"
So you
Fine.
have the alpha readers go through it, I assume then you, like,
Mhm.
cleaned it up based on their stuff,
Right,
and
right.
then what happened next?
Um, what happened? I don't know. It's been like a fever dream. I, paused for a little bit
Mm.
afterwards. Not much, probably like a week. Probably should have paused a little longer. And marketed the crap out of it. And
So what kind of marketing were you doing at that point since it was
oh, just
still new?
TikTok marketing. TikTok
"Hey,
and
this is what I'm working
Facebook as
on."
yeah, pretty much. Just kind of getting a little tiny buzz for it. And when I say
Mhm.
tiny, it was tiny. Um, and I just got my year anniversary TikTok video, and it said, it's like, oh, after I get to 50 followers, I'm gonna post my title of my book. I was like, oh, 50, that's so cute. Like, of course, I'm being condescending to myself, so it's fine.
I do the same thing, it's okay.
so, um, so after I did that, and we went in and got it to beta reader. I did a call to action for beta readers on
Mhm,
TikTok, and I wanted about 5, and I got that.
mhm,
And gave them 2 weeks to kind of go through it. So I gave them like the first half, and then they did what they needed to do, and then I
mhm,
gave them the second half, and then they wrapped it up, and so they were really helpful. And then my editor had it, and she finished it up, and I sent it off to ARC readers after that. And because I did while she was editing, I did a call to action for ARC readers. So I got all the ARC readers I needed, set up what I needed to set up, and of course, I didn't know about BookFunnel or any of those type of platforms then.
Mhm.
So I just watermarked it, flattened the PDF, and then just kind of tagged all of the emails that I sent out, and I individually sent them so I know which
Mhm.
one had which.
Mhm.
So that's the best way I could do it because I would still know who sent it, like who sent it out
Yeah.
because it'd be tagged. Um, so that's how I did it. And I didn't have any stolen until I put it on KU, oddly enough.
I have a whole theory about that. So, like, I've said it many times on here, but like, I have a theory on KU pirating. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a whole thing.
yeah, yeah. I'm not taking the KU route because I don't want my book pirated because it is being allowed. So
Yeah. No,
I'm
I
like, we're
completely
starting
agree.
wide. And also like if I were ever to get picked up TradPub, I would be wide that way anyway. So I'm like,
Right.
why not start out wide from the beginning? Why not start
Right.
out with an LLC imprint from the beginning? Why not,
Right.
all these things? And my husband, who is how I know who you are, I don't think I ever saw your videos until he was like, "Hey, you should check her out."
Really?
Uh,
Wait, who's your husband?
Alex Forchart.
Even know if I know
I don't
that.
know. He was like, "You should reach out to her. She does a podcast." It may have been he just saw your videos. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, I don't do a podcast. That's
He
awesome that he thinks that, though. Maybe I should.
I don't know. Anyways, yeah, he was like, "You should reach out. She does this thing." And I'm like, "Okay." And he may have gotten you confused with someone else. I have
It's
no idea. It worked out for me though because you were like, "Hey, I don't, but
yeah,
my friends do."
yeah, we
So,
know
and both of
many.
them, I'm on the schedule with them for
Fantastic.
at some point.
That's good. I'm glad it can work out that way.
So so at the beginning, like before it had been through editors and stuff, what were you telling people like the plot of the book or were you telling them about the characters or kind of what were you talking about in those early days?
I did character intro videos and just
Mhm.
kind of gave them like different characteristics of them. Of course, Pinterest really loved me because that's where I got all my pictures from. And still kind of do. I then I would give like little snippets here and there of different quotes and
Mhm.
kind of judge up the love story, kind of showcase that in it. And then for the guy side, I'd put a little bit more action and for, for the femme fatale, show that she's a, boss lady. And for the
Yeah.
mothers out there, she's a mom, like I just try
She's
to play.
it's diverse.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then just try to play all the angles basically that I didn't know existed until I started
Mhm.
trying to market the book. So,
Yeah.
and I looked up a couple of things of how to market a book and not in depth, please. I'm not an expert in any capacity. I'm sure I could
Shoot,
work on what I do.
I was like, people kept telling me, like, you had to put more of yourself into it. And I'm like, that's not my personality at all. So I'm like, 30-day
Yeah.
schedule for, you know what? I
Same.
found like 4 or 5 months worth. So I'm like, we're just going to
Yeah.
cycle through. We're just going to cycle through.
Right. So it was just like, okay, so what do I do next? So, but yeah, that's basically what I was doing, and was listening to all those marketing people on TikTok and saying, okay, well, how can I set this up? And I had a schedule on,
hmm
still do, what I'm posting today, and kind of alternate, and then
hmm
just kind of went from there. But yeah, it was mostly just introducing them to the characters because they don't know them.
hmm
Um, letting them know I had a broody MMC, and and they didn't like each other when they first met, and everybody loved that, so I just kind of played off of the tropey situations, and I guess that's
hmm
what you have to do when you have a book. So
Yep.
I wasn't planning on telling people it was a happily ever after, but apparently you have to tell people that it's a happily ever after, because they don't like being surprised if it's not, so
Yeah. I
yeah,
know
they're
that's
like,
like for romance, that's like one of the requirements.
right, like,
So
so Yeah, so I informed them of that, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's so great." I had people ask because I didn't put it in the beginning, "Is
Mhm.
it an HEA?" I'm like, "What is an HEA?"
That's
So I
where
have
I
no
feel like
idea.
doing so mine is a retelling. It's a
Mhm.
Beauty and the Beast retelling, and so,
Okay,
like, that ends happily, so I feel like I haven't been asked that probably because the
because it's
question
a
I
retelling.
get it's a slow burn, so the question I get is, "Well, is there spice?" And I'm like, "Well, it's slow, so not till the end, but it's
Right.
there." So
Right. And so I don't write spice. I had to let people know like it's vanilla, it's slow burn vanilla spice. It's not necessarily closed door, but it's not explicit either.
Mhm.
So but I've had people describe it as closed door. I'm like, well, it's not. I mean, I tell you what's happening, but I don't tell you what's happening.
See, and
So
I had a beta reader that was like, "You've described it this much, say the word."
yeah. No, I'm not gonna do it.
Well,
I
mine, it
can't.
was
I
like, you may
can't.
as well have
Yeah.
because, like, of how descriptive everything was. It was
I
like,
got you.
just name the body part. I'm like,
Right. Yeah,
"Okay."
no, it's not that descriptive. I called it called it the Song of Solomon, love scenes is what I called it.
Okay.
From the book of
Poetic.
very
Poetic.
poetic. More just about the feeling in which the act gave rather than the
Mhm.
act itself.
Okay.
So I just find I'm more comfortable writing that.
Mhm.
However, I will read a dark romance
Listen,
and enjoy every bit of it.
one of my real life friends, like people that I know for real
Yeah.
here, not just social media friends, was
Mhm.
like commented on one of my videos where it was like, I'll answer almost any question, right? And she's like, was it weird narrating spice for the first time? And I'm like, actually, no, because I've been reading spicy books like pretty much my whole adult life.
Right?
The first live that I narrated with spice, I was like, my face
Mhm.
was bright red and like I got a 3-day ban. And
Oh no.
yeah, I it was one of those a lot of narrators at the time had been getting banned for like violent content and bullying and
Mhm.
explicit content. And so it was like, I know it's going to happen, but like, where is
Right.
the line?
Right.
Um,
Because I think was it Corbin or Corvin rather
mhm,
was reading Callista's book, and he
mhm,
was the Russian dude. And it wasn't even that bad of what he was saying, but as soon as he finished, immediately got booted off, like
mhm,
immediate. And it wasn't even explicit; it was just a paragraph, and he was just saying how much he wanted to, and but nothing explicit. And he got
mhm.
booted right away. And it's just like I've seen people pretty much
Yeah.
full Monty on here. You see the outline of everything, and that's okay. Like, come on.
Yeah, I
Just
am convinced that most likely it's someone watching it reports you and that's why, whatever. Mine
yeah.
at the time cuz it was like the first live I had ever done
Hmm.
and or gotten permission to do and so it was like a bunch when you first start doing lives and you get like, a flood of viewers because they don't know
Right.
who's going to like your stuff. So who
Right.
knows what it was that got me flagged, but it was like his hand was grazing across her and like I'm
That
like,
was the end of
and
that.
I'm banned.
Yeah.
So now when I prep a book, I will flag chapters as like, hey, you've got some stuff in here.
Right.
Like for my book, it's slow burns. There's like nothing, nothing, nothing. And then like a couple chapters before the end, there's like two that are basically straight smut chapters.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just won't do those live at all because the entire chapters are not going to be okay.
So what's your book
So
called?
yeah. Currently looking for ARC readers.
You have my email.
Yeah, yeah. So you send it out to I'm guessing you formatted it before you sent it to ARC readers, or did you not format? Well, you said it was in PDF.
It was in PDF form. I had it semi-formatted of how I was going to end up with the final
Mhm,
look, essentially, and and sent it out that way through email. And then I did like a drawing out of my ARC readers, and three of them got a physical copy in a book box kind of thing.
mhm,
Um, and so I did it that way. trial and error of printing because never done it before. I had a different size
Right.
initially and hated it. Like when I got it, I ordered like five like an idiot instead of ordering one to see if I liked it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at them like, well, crap. I hate every single one of these. And like, of course, the formatting for the picture was all wrong because I thought the line meant it had to be within that line, not that that was just the
Mm,
cutoff line. And so it had a white line
yeah.
all the way around the white
Oh, no.
border. It was so terrible. And I think I like did a 7 by 10, and I'm like, why is this so awful looking? So luckily they got used in some kind of way. My BFF Hannah, she took one. She's like, "Can you send me a couple of your messed up books?" I was like, "Why?" She's like, "Just because." So I sent them to her, and she made them into these beautiful like pictures. They're like this 11 by 14,
So she
gorgeous
tore
things,
him
and
up,
she tore them
basically.
up, yeah, and
Yeah.
like made flowers out of some of the pages, and it was gorgeous.
See,
So
that's
I'm
a
like,
great way to
see,
use those.
that's how you could
Yeah.
do that. Yes, it wasn't a waste at all. But yeah, so you live and learn. And 6 by 9 is the life now. So
So this morning, a couple hours ago, I was ordering like stuff that's going to take a while to get here for PR boxes. So like the
mhm,
storage unit itself is going to take a couple weeks to get here because I need somewhere to store all of these things.
right,
And then like bookmarks and stuff, I'm not terribly concerned if like it's a little bit off on those things. But
right,
the book boxes, like the PR boxes themselves are expensive. Like you're spending almost as much per one of those when you're
girl.
having it custom done as on the book itself. So originally I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to order like 50 at one time and then if like people don't buy them, that's fine. only
Right,
paid for 50." And then it was having an issue loading the final like previewer where you like, "Yes, I approve that design. It looks good."
right,
So I'm like, "Okay, we're not gonna order 50 when I haven't actually seen the final markup." So I'm like,
right.
"We're gonna drop the extra like $40 to have one box shipped
Yeah,
to me." But then I'll know for sure whether it's good or not before I drop,
right.
several $100 on more.
Exactly.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, it's yeah. We have not ventured into the printing of the custom made boxes because I saw that price tag and I'm like,
I
"Ooh,
am
better not."
I am extra.
Yeah.
So I'm like, my whole philosophy for like this entire thing. So I started writing a book last year. It's on pause. This one took over my brain. We already discussed that happening.
Yeah.
So
Know
this
all
one
about
is
that.
coming out this year. But I'm like, I will do everything I possibly can to make sure that this book does as good as it can do. So
Yeah.
I way ahead of time started talking about it and getting beta readers and arc readers and street team set
Right.
up and good to go. My poor street team, because I also narrate other people's books and I do podcasts, and I'm like, Whatever you want to help with, you don't have to help with everything.
Right.
If you don't like podcasts, don't promote my podcasts."
Right.
So,
Right.
but I started all of that like back in probably like May,
Mhm.
and I didn't finish writing the book until like August. And so I started like way in advance. And then
Mhm.
like now I have someone helping me build my ARC team. And I have like, my beta team is finished with edits and I'm still
Right.
building. People are still asking to be on my beta team. And I'm like, I don't have another book yet, guys.
Yeah. Still
But
on the first one.
I knew from the beginning, I was like, I want to do PR boxes, at least for this first book. If it's a huge flop, I won't do it going forward, but usually
Right.
those do really well. So I,
Right.
I plan to give away some and then sell some as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I sold a couple of them, and after a while, after because people love them apparently, I'm like, "Oh,
yes.
I hated doing them," so I stopped.
So I'm
Like
buying all of the prints that I'm buying, like all of the like character art and stuff. You have to buy a
Mhm.
minimum quantity of 100. So I'm
Oh,
like
wow.
fully. And plus, my book is a Christmas time book that's releasing right before Christmas. So I'm like
Got
PR
you.
boxes with little gifts and stuff that are themed with the book.
Right,
I'm
right,
like, those will probably do really well, but I probably won't order more than the 100. So,
right, right. It's intense, man, like, all the little details that you didn't know existed until you
yeah.
decided to do this, and it's just amazing to me.
Well,
Like,
and
just
I wasn't going to do a PR box, and then one of my beta readers was like, "You have to do a PR box," and I'm like, "Okay, like, what do I include in this PR box?" Like,
right, right,
I had my characters already picked out because I'm terrible at, like, making up descriptions of people, so I had, like,
right,
picked the characters ahead of time from
right,
Canva. So I'm like, "Well, I can just use that character art for the character art," like
right. That's what we all had to do back in the day. Like, I'm telling you, like,
So, it is what it is. So
yeah,
now when did you said your first book actually released in January, right?
yeah. January of this year.
And you had the first one and the second one done about the same time, so how long did you wait before you released
I
number 2?
waited 6 months because my editor was on other working on other projects and stuff.
Mm.
So I waited 6 months. So it came out July of this year.
Now you have more than 2 out now, don't you? Or are you just
And then
talking about
immediately after that, I published because I had the whole summer to do stuff. I was like, you can't just leave me alone in a room with a computer. So I was okay. So I was writing my third book. I was getting stressed out because I was like, oh great, I got time to finish book three. And I stressed myself out because this is the final book in the
Mhm.
series, and
Is it
a
gonna be
lot of
good enough?
right. A lot of pieces are
Yeah.
coming together. I don't want to say goodbye to these characters. I don't want, so a whole lot of
Mhm.
emotional turmoil I didn't expect to happen because I'm like, I don't do this, but I've never done a series like this before.
Right.
So it's really in depth and just a lot of parts of the puzzle, pieces of the puzzle that have to come together. And I'm trying to make sure I remember all of them and have everything written down. And so I think
Mhm.
I burned myself out with that situation. And so, Hannah and I were both in the same boat, and we just like, you know what, let's step back. Let's write something fluffy and cozy and fun. And so
Mhm.
that's when I wrote Audacity a Flower in 2 weeks. And I was like,
Oh
you
my
know what?
gosh.
I'm just gonna publish it right after right after the second book comes out. Why not? So I did that, and like, just I didn't do beta readers or all that kind of stuff. I just here, go ahead and edit that. Thank you. And it's out. It was out in August, right after.
So, do you regret not doing the beta readers for that
No,
one?
no,
Okay.
I love that book. I don't care.
So
It
I
wasn't meant to
had
be in depth or anything. It was just a
yeah.
simple book, cozy, cute, and Regency inspired, but fantasy because it's not really Regency. So
T.L. Combs liked The Little Mermaid growing up. Today we'll be reading another Hans Christian Andersen story, The Loveliest Rose in the World. Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish author. Although a prolific writer of plays, travelogues, novels, and poems, he is best remembered for his literary fairy tales. Andersen's fairy tales, consisting of 156 stories across 9 volumes, have been translated into more than 125 languages. They have become culturally embedded in the West's collective consciousness, readily accessible to children but presenting lessons of virtue and resilience in the face of adversity for mature readers as well. His most famous fairy tales include The Emperor's New Clothes, The Little Mermaid, The Nightingale, The Steadfast Tin Soldier, The Red Shoes, The Princess and the Pea, The Snow Queen, The Ugly Duckling, Little Match Girl, and Thumbelina. His stories have inspired ballets, plays, and animated and live action films. Don't forget we're reading Les Morts d'Arthur, the story of King Arthur and of his noble knights of the Round Table on our Patreon. You can find a link in the show notes. The loveliest rose in the world. There lived once a great queen, in whose garden were found all seasons the most splendid flowers, and from every land in the world. She especially loved roses, and therefore she possessed the most beautiful varieties of this flower. From the wild hedgerows with its apple-scented leaves to the splendid Provence rose. They grew near the shelter of the walls, wound themselves round columns and window frames, crept along passages and over the ceilings of the halls. They were of every fragrance and color. But care and sorrow dwelt within these halls. The queen lay upon a sick bed, and the doctors declared that she must die. "There is still one thing that could save her," said one of the wisest among them. "Bring her the loveliest rose in the world, one which exhibits the purest and brightest love, and if it is brought to her before her eyes close, she will not die." Then from all parts came those who brought roses that bloomed in every garden. But they were not the right sort. The flower must be one from the garden of love, but which of the roses there showed forth the highest and purest love? The poet sang of this rose, the loveliest in the world, and each named one which he considered worthy of that title. An intelligence of what was required was sent far and wide to every heart that beat with love, to every class, age, and condition. "No one has yet named the flower," said the wise man. "No one has pointed out the spot where it blooms in all its splendor. It is not a rose from the coffin of Romeo and Juliet, or from the grave of Walberg, though these roses will live in everlasting song. It is not one of the roses which sprouted forth from the blood-stained fame of Winkelried. The blood which flows from the breast of a hero who dies for his country is sacred, and his memory is sweet. And no rose can be redder than the blood which flows from his veins. Neither is it the magic flower of science, to obtain which wondrous flower a man devotes many an hour of his fresh young life in sleepless nights, in a lonely chamber." "I know where it blooms," said a happy mother, who came with her lovely child to the bedside of the queen. "I know where the loveliest rose in the world is. It is seen on the blooming cheeks of my sweet child, when it expresses the pure and holy love of infancy. When refreshed by sleep, it opens its eyes and smiles upon me with childlike affection."
"This is a lovely rose," said the wise man, "but there is one still more lovely."
"Yes, one far more lovely," said one of the women. "I have seen it, and a loftier and purer rose does not bloom. But it was white, like the leaves of a blush rose. I saw it on the cheeks of the queen. She had taken off her golden crown, and through the long dreary night, she carried her sick child in her arms. She wept over it, kissed it, and prayed for it as only a mother can pray in that hour of her anguish."
"Holy and wonderful in its might is the white rose of grief, but it is not the one we seek."
"No, the loveliest rose in the world I saw at the Lord's table," said the good old bishop. "I saw it shine as if an angel's face had appeared. A young maiden knelt at the altar and renewed the vows made at her baptism, and there were white roses and red roses on the blushing cheeks of that young girl. She looked up to heaven with all the purity and love of her young spirit, in all the expression of the highest and purest love."
"May she be blessed," said the wise man, "but no one has yet named the loveliest rose in the world."
Then there came into the room a child, the queen's little son. Tears stood in his eyes and glistened on his cheeks. He carried a great book, and the binding was of velvet with silver clasps. "Mother," cried the little boy, "only hear what I have read." And the child seated himself by the bedside and read from the book of him who suffered death on the cross to save all men, even who are yet unborn. He read, "Greater love hath no man than this." And as he read, a roseate hue spread over the cheeks of the queen, and her eyes became so enlightened and clear that she saw from the leaves of the book a lovely rose spring forth, a type of him who shed his blood on the cross. "I see," she said, "he who beholds this, the loveliest rose on earth, shall never die." Thank you for joining Freya's Fairy Tales. Be sure to come back next week for the conclusion of T.L. Combs' journey to holding her own fairy tale in her hands, and to hear another of her favorite fairy tales.